They almost fired me over a broken forklift. One shift, one piece of junk machine, and 3 crates of fragile goods smashed to pieces. And whose name showed up on the incident report? Mine. Didn't matter that I wasn't even supposed to be using that forklift. Didn't matter that it was Marky, one of the old-timers, who accidentally switched my assignment right before lunch. Didn't matter that half the guys saw the damn thing was leaking hydraulic fluid like a stuck pig. All the bosses saw was a broken machine, a few $1,000s worth of damaged goods, and my ID number flashing red on the report. Probation, the supervisor barked at me. One more screw up, and you're out. That was the moment. The second my stomach dropped and the slow, cold anger settled into my bones. Not fear. Not sadness. Anger. Because it wasn't an accident. And it wasn't just bad luck. It was a hit. A setup. And it wasn't even the first one. I started noticing it the very first week at Pine Hollow Logistics. At first, it was just little things. Wrong aisle numbers given at morning assignments. Switching my lunch breaks so I got stuck with the worst unloading shifts. The busted pallet jack everyone knew to avoid somehow ending up in my hands every damn night. And when I stumbled, when I missed my quotas by just a hair, the old-timers, the ones who ran the place like a backroom poker game, smirked and shook their heads. Can't hack it, huh, rookie? It wasn't just me, either. I watched it happen to every new hire who walked through that battered metal door. Mike, the kid from across the tracks who worked 2 jobs to pay his brother's hospital bills. Rick, the quiet, wiry guy who could outlift any of them but got dumped with the worst assignments anyway. Tanya, tough as nails but stuck cleaning the trash bays every weekend while the senior guys clocked double pay pulling emergency overtime shifts. It was a system. A rotten, rigged system. The veterans had built a little empire of laziness and cruelty. Stick together. Work less. Blame the rookies. If a newbie quit? Good. One less set of eyes. One more excuse to spread the work among the few they trusted. If a newbie stayed? Better. A new punching bag. But me? I wasn't planning on quitting. Not by a long shot. If they thought they could bleed me dry and shove me out the door like yesterday's trash, they had no idea the kind of war they just declared. One night, after another brutal 14-hour shift moving dead freight from one end of the warehouse to the other, I found myself sitting on the cracked loading dock with Mike and Rick. The air was thick with heat and diesel fumes. Sweat soaked through my shirt, stinging my skin. For a long time, we didn't say a word, just stared out at the empty gravel lot. Then Mike lit a cigarette with a shaky hand and said, low and bitter, "They don't think we're worth nothing, Dot." Rick spit into the dirt. "They'll think different soon enough." I looked at them. They looked at me. No big speeches. No rallying cries. Just a simple, silent understanding passing between us like a loaded gun sliding across a table. We weren't going to take it anymore. They pushed us too far. Now, it was our turn to push back. We didn't move fast. That was their mistake, thinking we would. See, the old dogs were used to rookies either exploding or quitting. They expected anger, yelling, maybe a fist fight in the parking lot. Something stupid. Something easy to squash. They weren't ready for patience. They weren't ready for cold revenge. First thing we did was observe. Where they slacked off. Where they stashed broken equipment so it disappeared before audits. Which scanners they rigged to log fake shifts. Which supervisors they bribed with cases of beer and promises of free labor. Mike had a sharp eye. Rick had quiet ears. And me? I had a memory like a steel trap when I was pissed off. Second thing we did was collect evidence. Pictures of bad barcodes hidden in inventory. Time cards that didn't match dock logs. Forklift inspection sheets marked safe with broken brakes. All it took was a few late-night sweeps with our phones set to silent. Snapping pictures like ghosts in the dark. We found one supervisor, Brent, who was especially dirty. Laughed in rookies' faces. Took kickbacks from the veterans to assign them cushy shifts. And we found his weak spot. He used a company laptop to run a side hustle, flipping stolen tools online. Stupid. Real stupid. Third thing we did was build alliances. Not everybody loved the old guard. Some of the mid-level guys, not quite rookies, not quite veterans, were sick of getting squeezed, too. All it took was a few whispered conversations on smoke breaks. A few favors traded back and forth. A few casual nods across the break room. The army was growing. Quiet. Invisible. But real. It wasn't about fighting fair. It wasn't about screaming into the void. It was about waiting. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting for their pride to make them sloppy. Waiting for the big inspection day. When the regional manager would roll through town, clipboard in hand, ready to check every corner of Pine Hollow Logistics. They thought they were untouchable. They thought we were too stupid, too soft, too weak. They thought wrong. Late one night, sitting on the cold concrete loading dock, Rick said it best. They built this house of cards. All we gotta do is flick it. I smiled. A real smile this time. Because I could feel it in my bones. The fall was coming. And it was gonna be loud. First shots in a war ain't always fired with bullets. Sometimes they come with a clipboard and a clipboard smile. Inspection Day was marked on the calendar like a holiday. Every year, Regional Manager Calvin Holbrook, a man who smelled like expensive cologne and hated inefficiency more than sin itself, rolled through Pine Hollow Logistics with a sharp eye and a sharper pen. The veterans scrambled like roaches under a flipped light, cleaning, fixing, adjusting timesheets, pretending they hadn't spent 11 months a year stealing oxygen. We made damn sure this year would be different. Started small. Misfiled a few old logs, the ones that showed miraculous overtime from Markey and his buddies. Just enough to stick out. Shifted a few broken pallet jacks into high-traffic aisles where Holbrook was guaranteed to stroll. Pulled outdated forklift inspection stickers off the machines. Real subtle. Nothing obvious. Nothing that pointed back to us. Just a few cracks in the paint. Then we turned up the heat. Mike, accidentally, left a cart of broken boxes labeled with Brent's initials smack in the middle of the main dock. Rick quietly switched a few paperwork files, replacing fixed reports with the real, dirty copies we'd photographed. And me? I handed Holbrook a steaming cup of coffee with a polite smile the minute he walked in. Nothing wrong with a little hospitality. By lunchtime, the whispers started. Holbrook was frowning harder than a preacher at a poker table. By 2 p.m., Brent was beet red and snapping at everyone. By 3 p.m., Markey was practically running from aisle to aisle trying to patch the leaks we kept widening. But the real kicker? That came around 4 p.m., when Holbrook asked Brent for a full inventory log. And Brent, sweaty and pale, handed him a flash drive full of doctored files. The ones we knew. The ones we had copied. The ones already quietly uploaded to the cloud, time-stamped and untouchable. Holbrook didn't say a word. Just raised an eyebrow. Typed a few commands. Scrolled. Paused. Looked at Brent over his glasses like a man staring at a cockroach he wasn't sure he wanted to step on or study. Meanwhile, the veterans panicked. Whispered meetings behind the loading racks. Frantic phone calls. People getting sick and slipping out early. It was beautiful, like watching termites realize the floor was gone just as they started to fall through it. That night, sitting in Mike's battered pickup in the far end of the lot, we clinked warm sodas together like champagne flutes. Rick grinned, teeth flashing in the moonlight. "This is just the beginning," he said. I nodded, staring out over the dark warehouse, feeling the tension coil tighter and tighter. "Tomorrow," I said, "we light the fuse." The morning after the inspection felt different. The air was tighter, quieter, like the whole building was holding its breath. The veterans acted like nothing was wrong. Markey laughed too loud at his own jokes. Brent barked orders like a wounded dog trying to scare off bigger wolves. Even old Tommy, usually the king of lazy forklift naps, was buzzing around like a damn bee. But you could see it in their eyes. Panic. Deep, gut-clenching panic. Because they knew. Even if they didn't know how or when. They knew the clock was ticking down on their little kingdom. Holbrook didn't show up right away. That was smart. Gave them just enough rope to hang themselves with. By noon, rumors started flying. They're auditing the overtime sheets. Holbrook's asking for forklift maintenance records. Somebody snitched. The veterans snapped. And not at us. At each other. Brent blamed Markey for not covering the broken forklifts better. Markey blamed Tommy for messing up the inventory logs. Tommy blamed Brent for signing the inspection sheets in the first place. Screaming matches broke out in the break room. Pushes. Shoves. Wild accusations. Nobody trusted anybody anymore. Meanwhile, we kept our heads down. Working. Moving freight. Smiling real polite when the bosses passed by. The few mid-level guys who quietly allied with us. They started whispering even more now. Feeding us information. Passing along little nuggets of gold like. Brent's meeting with Holbrook at 2. He looks ready to crap himself. At 2 p.m. sharp, we watched from the upper catwalk as Brent marched into Holbrook's temporary office. Clutching a thick folder of corrected documents. Too little, too late. By 2:15, the door slammed open. Brent stormed out, face like a thundercloud, shouting over his shoulder. "You can't prove nothing. You got no right." Holbrook's calm voice floated after him like a knife wrapped in silk. "That's what lawyers are for, Mr. Brent." By shift's end, Brent's badge access was revoked. Just like that. Gone. Out the door. One domino down. The ripple effect was instant. Marky tried to cover his own ass by throwing Tommy under the bus. Tommy fired back with receipts showing Marky falsified half his overtime logs. Someone, maybe one of our new friends, tipped Holbrook to check Marky's locker, where, surprise, surprise, they found a stash of stolen company equipment. By Friday, Marky was gone too. Walked out under the heavy stare of the entire loading dock crew, carrying his personal junk in a cardboard box. Nobody clapped. Nobody said goodbye. Not even the old-timers who used to share their smokes and war stories with him. Mike leaned over to me as we watched through the bay doors. "Two down," he whispered. "How many more to go?" I smiled real slow. "All of them," I said. "Every last rat." After Brent and Marky went down, the warehouse turned into a battlefield. Not loud. Not with fists and shouting. No, it was quieter than that. Deadly quiet. Like the air before a tornado touches down. The old guard was in full-on survival mode. The ones still standing, Tommy, Big Earl, and a few others, started splitting into little cliques, whispering, plotting, throwing blame around like hot potatoes. Nobody trusted anybody anymore. Tommy started rumors that Earl had been pocketing petty cash. Earl retaliated by handing Holbrook anonymous tips about Tommy's long-forgotten forklift crashes. And all the while, me, Mike, Rick, and the few others we had pulled onto our side kept working. Steady, quiet, smiling, moving freight, hitting quotas, keeping noses clean, making damn sure that when the storm finally broke, we'd be the only ones left standing. And Holbrook? He smelled blood in the water. Started demanding weekly audits, surprise locker inspections, random drug tests. If he could crack open one of them and spill their guts, he knew the rest would fall apart without a fight. Tommy cracked first. Early Monday morning, he showed up late, reeking of whiskey and fear, screaming that it was all a setup, that somebody was framing the real workers, that the company was out to get them. He threw a metal clipboard across the loading dock so hard it left a dent in the break room door. Security escorted him out 30 minutes later. Another rat overboard. Big Earl tried to play smart. Tried to rally the last few survivors into standing together. Problem was, nobody was buying what he was selling. Most of them had already made quiet side deals, cut their own throats to save their skin. That Friday, after a brutal double shift, Earl cornered me behind Dock 4. The guy was sweating bullets, hands twitching, voice a frantic hiss. "Listen, man, we ain't gotta keep this war going. You help me out. I'll make sure you get taken care of. Special projects. Weekend shifts. Good pay. Translation? Betray your boys and join the sinking ship." I looked him dead in the eye, real calm, real cold, and said, "You had your chance to play fair. You made your bed. Now you're gonna lie in it." Then I walked away, leaving him standing there, small and desperate, like a rat looking for a hole in a sinking ship. By the time Monday rolled around, only 2 or 3 of the old crew were still on their feet, and even they were teetering. The dominoes weren't just falling anymore. They were crashing. And the best part? We hadn't even fired our biggest shot yet. Not yet, but real soon. Some fights you win with fists. Others, you win with patience. Holbrook wasn't dumb. He knew something was rotten in the warehouse. He just didn't know how deep it went or how many rats were still hiding in the walls. So he announced a mandatory warehouse-wide audit. All freight, all paperwork, all equipment, every inch of the operation, from receiving to shipping. The veterans? They panicked. Real panic now. No more fake smiles or forced laughs. They started double-checking their fake logs, hiding broken equipment in unused bays, sneaking extra overtime hours into the system like no one would notice. Pathetic. And while they scrambled, we built the trap. Mike and Rick got assigned to the inventory teams. I pulled night shifts with a few trusted mid-levels who were sick of the corruption too. Together, we found a few choice items. A forklift with cut safety wires hidden behind pallets of expired stock. Dozens of broken scanners tossed into a junk room and reported as operational. Falsified shipping receipts that showed shipments processed on days the warehouse was closed. All documented. all photographed, all neatly labeled and slipped into Holbrook's growing case file. But the real masterpiece? That was Earl's locker. Old Big Earl thought he was slick. He'd been running a little side hustle for years, selling off damaged goods that disappeared from inventory before anyone noticed. Small stuff at first. Tools, power cords, electronics. But over time, he got greedy, started moving bigger things. TVs, laptops, generators, all missing from company reports. Mike had a buddy in IT, a guy who owed him a favor. Took about 3 phone calls and a little nudge in the right direction. And suddenly, Holbrook had access to every shady shipment, every bogus delivery, every forged signature. The proof was ironclad. The timing couldn't have been sweeter. The day before the big audit, we accidentally left one of Earl's fake shipping receipts tucked inside a box of random paperwork Holbrook was reviewing. Casual, untraceable, but deadly. By the time the sun rose on audit day, the warehouse floor was buzzing with tension. Old guys sweating bullets, supervisors snapping at rookies, forklifts screeching around corners like scared dogs. Everyone knew something big was about to hit. They just didn't know where the hammer was going to fall. Standing there by Dock 3, hands tucked into my pockets, I watched it all unfold with a calmness I hadn't felt in weeks. Because I knew we weren't fighting anymore. We were winning. And pretty damn soon, they were going to find out what it felt like to choke on their own lies. Audit day hit Pine Hollow Logistics like a thunderclap. At 8 a.m. sharp, Holbrook and his team rolled in now. Clipboards, tablets, company jackets sharp enough to cut glass. No smiles. No small talk. Just business. And behind them, 2 suits from corporate legal. Real serious types. The kind that didn't come out unless someone's head was already halfway on the chopping block. The warehouse froze. Forklifts idled. Workers pretended to check pallets they'd checked 3 times already. Supervisors pulled tight little circles in the corners, whispering and sweating. And the old-timers? They scattered like roaches. First crack. Holbrook cornered Big Earl at the shipping desk. Started asking polite questions. Real polite. About missing shipments. Broken scanners. Late-night loading logs that didn't add up. Earl tried to bluff. Tried to joke. Tried to smile his way out. But Holbrook just stood there, letting him drown in his own nervous babbling. Second crack. Mike and Rick, all official and shiny in their audit vests, found a pile of lost inventory buried behind Dock 5. Generators. Laptops. Power tools. All items Earl had reported as defective and disposed of. Oops. Third crack. Holbrook asked to inspect employee lockers. And what did they find in Earl's? Not just stolen goods. Not just fake shipping labels. They found a detailed little notebook. Dates. Times. Inventory IDs. Who took what? How much they made off each item. It wasn't just Earl. The notebook named names. Tommy. Marky. Half the old guard. The trap slammed shut. Earl tried to run. I kid you not. Tried to bolt out the back loading dock like a busted thief on daytime TV. 2 warehouse security guys tackled him to the asphalt before he made it 10 steps. Whole crew watched it happen. Some even laughed. By lunch break, Holbrook stood in the middle of the warehouse floor, clipboard in hand, voice calm but sharp enough to shave paint off the walls. Effective immediately, he said, we are suspending the following employees pending investigation. He started reading names, one after another. Old faces. Old untouchables. Gone. Just like that. The warehouse didn't cheer. Didn't boo. Just stood there, breathing hard, watching the mighty fall. Because everybody knew. This wasn't the end. This was just the start. Mike clapped me on the back as we walked past the wreckage. Feels good, don't it? I grinned. Better than good, I said. Feels right. And deep down, I knew. The real show was still coming. The biggest fire was yet to be lit. And when it did, no one was walking away clean. After Earl and the others got dragged out, you'd think the warehouse would calm down. It didn't. It got worse. The old guard, what little was left of them, turned feral, snapping at rookies, whispering accusations, throwing dirty looks across the loading bays. Nobody trusted nobody anymore. The place felt radioactive. Holbrook didn't back off. If anything, he turned the screws tighter. More random inspections. More audits. More meetings. And then he announced the big one. Mandatory staff meeting, Friday afternoon. Full attendance required. No excuses. No callouts. Everyone, Rookies, veterans, supervisors, in the main dock at 4 p.m. sharp. The rumors started swirling faster than a toilet flush. They're going to shut down the warehouse. They're bringing in cops. They're firing half the staff. Every story crazier than the last. And the veterans? They started getting desperate. Big Jake, one of the last holdouts, tried to cozy up to Holbrook. Started wearing fresh shirts. Talking about new ideas for safety improvements. Smiling a little too wide. Pathetic. Another one, old Randy, tried to shift all blame onto Earl, claiming he was forced to go along with it. Nobody bought it. Especially not Holbrook. He was just taking notes. Stacking bodies. Mike, Rick, and I? We kept our heads down. Working. Moving freight. Smiling when appropriate. And waiting. Because we knew. The fuse was lit. And Friday was gonna blow the roof off. The day of the meeting, the air felt so thick you could chew it. Guys were pacing. Sweating through their shirts. Checking their phones like maybe an emergency would magically save them. No miracles coming today, boys. For PM. Everyone gathered on the main dock. Holbrook stood up front, calm and collected, wearing the slight smile of a man who already knew how this movie was going to end. Behind him, a laptop hooked up to a big projector screen. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said. "Today we're going to walk through a few irregularities." Click. The screen lit up. First slide. Timecard fraud evidence, fake overtime hours highlighted in red. Murmurs. Shifting feet. Click. Second slide. Inventory theft logs from Earl's little notebook. More gasps. Some curses under breath. Click. Third slide. Emails. Real, verifiable, timestamped emails. Showing which supervisors approved which cover-ups. Silence. A heavy, awful silence. Holbrook looked out at the crowd. Smiled a little wider. Now, before anyone starts pointing fingers. We've already conducted individual interviews. He flipped to the next slide. A list of names. Earl, Marky, Tommy, Big Jake, Randy, and a few more. Every dirty player who thought they were untouchable. Effective immediately, Holbrook said. These employees are terminated. Charges are pending. Boom. Just like that. The veterans erupted. Screaming, shouting, cursing. Jake lunged at Holbrook and had to be dragged out by security. Randy collapsed onto a stack of pallets, head in his hands. A few others tried to plead their cases, babbling like drowning men grabbing for lifelines. No use. It was over. Done. Finished. Standing in the back with Mike and Rick. I felt a slow, deep satisfaction roll through me. Not gloating. Not smug. Just cold, clean victory. But deep down, I knew one thing. This wasn't the final blow yet. The real reckoning was coming. And when it hit, even the walls were gonna feel it. You could feel it building. Like a pressure cooker about to blow its lid clean off. After Holbrook read the names, the warehouse went dead silent for about 5 seconds. 5 long, loaded seconds. Then, all hell broke loose. Jake, red-faced and spitting mad, broke free from the security guys and lunged straight at Holbrook, screaming. "This is a damn setup. You got no proof." Security tackled him again, this time hard enough to rattle the racks. Some of the old-timers still left standing. Those who thought they might squirm their way out started yelling too. "We built this place. We made you money. You can't just throw us away." Holbrook didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stood there, hands folded, watching them burn. Meanwhile, Rick and Mike slipped through the crowd, quiet as shadows, handing out printed copies of the real evidence to everyone still pretending they didn't know nothing. The files didn't lie. Fake orders, stolen goods, signed-off scams. Black ink on white paper. Cold. Brutal. Final. A few of the rookies, the mid-levels, hell, even some supervisors, started cheering. Not loud. Not crazy. Just slow, heavy claps that echoed across the loading dock, like the sound of nails being driven into a coffin. One old-timer, Randy, fell to his knees, crying and begging Holbrook for one more chance. Holbrook just stared at him, like he was dog shit stuck to the bottom of a boot. "Should have thought of that 3 years ago," Holbrook said, "when you were busy burying better men." In the middle of it all, I just stood there, arms crossed, watching it burn, watching the old empire fall apart. Brick by rotten brick. Not with fists, not with weapons, but with truth. Sharp, unforgiving, final. Security started hauling the fired guys out one by one. No dignity, no ceremony, just a trail of broken pride and empty threats, drifting behind them like trash in the wind. As Jake was dragged past me, he locked eyes with me, his face twisted with rage, confusion, betrayal. He knew. They all knew now. It was us. The rookies. The outcasts. The ones they thought were too weak to matter. We had turned the blade, and we had cut them to the bone. By the end of the meeting, the warehouse floor was littered with resignation papers, broken dreams, and stunned silence. And us? We were still standing, still working, still moving forward. But it wasn't quite over yet. One last thing had to happen. One last move to seal it. Because the next morning, when the dust had barely settled, Holbrook called me, Mike, and Rick into his office. And what he said, what he offered, that was the real crown jewel of the whole damn war. Holbrook's office smelled like fresh paper and cold coffee. Real business smell. No lies. No excuses. No bullshit. He didn't waste time. Didn't offer us coffee. Didn't fake a smile. Just pointed at 3 neatly printed contracts on his desk. You boys did good, he said, voice flat but carrying the weight of a gavel. Better than good. He tapped the contracts. I'm offering each of you a full-time supervisor position. New pay grade. Full benefits. Authority to build your own teams. Mike's mouth dropped open. Rick blinked like he'd been hit in the face with a shovel. Me? I just smiled. Slow and steady. The kind of smile that comes after you fought a dirty war. And walked away not just alive, but standing on top of the ashes. I didn't need to think it over. Didn't need to discuss it with my family. Didn't need to pray on it. I reached out, picked up the pen, signed my name in bold, clean strokes. Holbrook nodded once. Good. Let's rebuild this place right. And just like that, the warehouse that tried to break us was ours. The old rats were gone. Their kingdom of laziness and theft? Gone. Their sneers, their cheap jokes, their little scams? Gone. All that was left was fresh concrete, open docks, and new blood ready to move real freight the right way. Our way. We didn't throw a party. Didn't gloat. Didn't dance on their graves. We just got back to work. Loading. Lifting. Building something real. And when I walk through that warehouse now, boots echoing off clean floors. Pallets stacked straight. New faces smiling instead of sneering. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel angry. I felt right. Because some battles, some wars, they're worth every drop of sweat and blood, especially when you're the one left standing at the end.